Welcome to Smart to Fish Wild, a podcast where a passion for the outdoors meets the strategy of building a meaningful, well-designed life. I'm Mark Candler, Colorado native, outdoorsman, passionate fly fisherman, proud father, and senior partner of Silver Oak Wealth Planning. Each week, I have the real pleasure of sitting down with some amazing people who are turning their passion into purpose and designing lives that leave room for what matters the most. Today, I'm fortunate to be joined by Max Kantor, manager of the United States for Guideline, a Norwegian fishing brand. Today, we're going to talk about Max's early introduction to fly fishing, his years of guiding all over the place, Alaska, Russia, Iceland, several other places. And we're going to talk about how those experiences shaped his philosophy. A major theme of the discussion today is conservation, including ethical fish handling, habitat respect, and environmentally responsible product development at his company, Guideline. So sit back and enjoy the conversation, and I hope you find value. So welcome to Smart to Fish Wild, and today I am blessed to be joined by Max Kantor, who's just a measly 28 years younger than I am. And I only bring that up because he runs circles around me in his experiences in the fly fishing world and industry and profession. And Max, thanks so much for your time.
Thanks so much for having me.
Yeah, it's a real pleasure. So I just wanted to kind of start the story out by, how did you first get introduced to the art of fly fishing?
So it's a multi-part answer maybe, but I would just start to say that fly fishing has always been there. It's a seeming constant in my life. I can't remember actually starting for the first time. All I know is I used to get dragged to the river in one of those little baby carriers starting from like 6 weeks old or something like that. I've got photos going way, way back with a fly rod in hand while I was learning to walk. And yeah, it was just always something that's been there. I grew up in the northeast of the U.S. in Connecticut, which is really cool because it's got a freshwater and a saltwater fishery really close by. I'd say like a lot of people, I learned or took first steps on trout and warm water species, but was really lucky to grow up with the saltwater stuff in my backyard too, which helped a lot to grow and develop. And it's still one of my favorite avenues to take it.
So that was your father that dragged you out when you were 6 weeks old?
Yep. Stuck me in the little baby carrier, and that was that. It ruined me forever.
Wow. So what brought you to Colorado College for school?
Yeah. So I know we talked a little bit about this yesterday in prep, but so I had kind of, we'll call it a hankering to get out of the East Coast, at least for a little bit. Moved west, applied to some schools around the country, was mainly looking at bio, but found a really cool community in Colorado College that ended up being a really closely, like, tight-knit group of serious fly anglers. I was lucky to have some great friends that were just as obsessed about it as I was. And Colorado College, for anybody that doesn't know, like, you take one class at a time and you cram a month's or year's worth, of class in a month. So while you're doing that all day, depending if you have lab or not, you've got the afternoons free to fish and you've got breaks between those classes. And we sure did. So my friends Beck, Jeremy, and I would, I'm happy to say it now. I think no one's going to get mad at me at this point, being like well over a decade after, but we fished every day. We were on the water every day. We were writing papers on the river. The South Platte's an hour away. The Arkansas is 45 minutes to an hour away. There's still waters. And then that kind of grew to like, okay, let's spend every weekend in Wyoming because we can.
Where in Wyoming, typically?
All over the place. Like, we drove up as far as almost to the Tetons some weekends. We spent a lot of time in like Central South Wyoming. We bounced to Southwest Wyoming, but that's just one example. We were all over between the time of year for stillwaters, tailwaters, freestones, streamer stuff, mousing stuff, just wherever, with a focus on like looking for trophy wild fish. We were all after the ones that everybody wants to catch, and there's definitely a significant amount of effort that goes into that, but really enjoyed the pursuit of like taking this seriously to the next level there, which I'm sure segues into this next part. Like, all of us ended up as fishing guides at one point or another. I started doing guide seasons in Alaska, like right as I could. I grew up running boats in saltwater in Connecticut, so that was no issue. But yeah, I moved up to Alaska in a place called Lake Creek in the Yetna and spent a few years there in the summer before finishing up school, taking the next steps, and beginning what was a pretty fun international guide career.
So Max, absolutely amazed at your resume. And, what sticks out to me is Russia. Would you mind sharing with us what makes your experience in Russia and the ecology, the environment so unique and so special?
Yeah, absolutely. So from Colorado College and guiding into Alaska, my first real international guide gig was the Panoi in Russia. And I like to attribute that to just sort of blind dumb luck. I sent resumes out. I talked to the manager at the time, got the call saying, "Hey, you're headed over to the Panoi." And at that point I was, like really, really early 20s, which was cool. And like, I just viewed it as the ultimate anadromous fly fishing learning experience. Like, the Panoi is and will always be like the greatest Atlantic salmon river in the world. For anyone wondering about like Atlantic salmon fishing, I can sum this up really quick in that they are a fish that come with a lot of history. They're a fish that you can catch on the swing in a ton of ways. And through some reasons that are humans' fault and some reasons that are not, they're a fish that is just really special in this day and age. And for anyone that's lucky or privileged enough to get to hold one or many regularly, you're definitely in a real special place. But I've fished and I've guided for Atlantics all over the place. I've fished for them in Scotland. I checked the Springer off last year. I've guided for them in Iceland, which was solid fishing. I've not done it in Canada, but the difference between all these other places and the Panoi is that the amount of rod time and luck that just goes into catching them. For anyone that doesn't know, the Panoi is in the southeast part of the Kola Peninsula. It's a 3-hour ride in an Me-8 helicopter to get there. From the second you get in the helicopter and you look down out the window, you don't see anything. It's just tundra with a lot of rivers, lakes, and a few scattered trees close to the water. Not like Alaskan or Western Canadian tundra that has the return of like Pacific salmon life. It looks almost lifeless out there. Atlantic salmon can spawn more than one time, though most only actually can do it once. And talking to biologists about this, they have an incredible number of life history strategies. But regarding Russia in the first place and the Panoi, the numbers of fish and the life history strategies that take place in that river are unlike anything else that's there in the world. So Panoi gets a massive run of fish that's split into 3 separate runs. The majority of them are called osenkas or ice fish. Those are fish that come in the fall. They will spend a full year in the river before they actually spawn. So they come in with gigantic fat reserves, though they're like solid. They fight incredibly hard. They're super bright, and they'll spend that first winter under the ice, where the next spring they still haven't spawned. They're still like regular Atlantic salmon. They'll spawn that next fall, and then they'll spend one more winter under the ice before they head back out to the ocean. And then you have a summer run that comes in. That's like roughly 25% of the fish, and those are normal Atlantic salmon. They're fish that come in mid-June, July. They'll spawn that October, and then they'll leave back out to the ocean the following spring. So if you're fishing there in the fall, you're fishing to these giant sea-liced, super fresh running fish that will spend 18 months in the river. You're fishing over last year's fall fish, and you're fishing over the summer fish.
Wow.
Just in terms of like productivity, like my very first week ever guiding there, they knew I could drive a jet boat. I'd never really seen the river. I got a map on a bar napkin, and I went out and we caught like 25 of them. And it was just like, go wherever the water speed's good, steady swings, move the fly a little bit faster than the current, fish something with some orange in it. And if you've got the right tip and the right line on, like you're gonna catch fish. There's not really
25 in one day.
Oh yeah, I think between the 24 guides, we landed like 1,600 salmon for that week, and that doesn't count ones that people lost or messed up. We also, like as part of running that lodge, there was a tagging program there. There was a scientist on site, and it was just a really cool exercise in like all forms of anadromous fish fishing. It was like, if you want to learn how to get really good at skating fish, there you go. Temperature hits 8 degrees Celsius, like fish a floating line and skater and get as many as you want. If you want to like cut through the noise and look for a big one, there were ways to do that there too. But it was just like, how do you get 200 years of Atlantic salmon fishing experience and cram it into a summer? And I was lucky enough to spend a good few years there before political climate shifted, and I'm just really grateful for the time spent on that river with some really fishy people.
Wow. Any traffic up there? I mean, or are you basically all alone?
There's 16 guides, so 16 jet boats with 2 anglers apiece, but we were fishing like 90 miles of river that was split into beats. So the only people you were seeing were people that you're meant to be seeing. So you'd sometimes share a really big beat that was like 8 or 10 miles with a couple guides, especially if you're chasing like fresh fish and you'd just be on the radio sharing with what you could if you figured something special out that day to help and make sure everybody's day's better.
Oh my God. That just sounds like an absolute dream to me. So, Max, could you share with us your view of your role as a guide and how that correlates with conservation?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it was when you're there and you're operating in these remote areas, it's something that you have to take into account, as both you and your guests are guests in this space. So both while I was a guide, but I ended up managing the Panoi briefly before we couldn't go back. But while I was managing it, you always do a welcome speech for guests, and the speech would end, with exactly what I said there. We're all guests here. We all hope to enjoy this place, and we hope for this place to exist at the absolute peak of its environmental richness, whether or not we're there with or without us. So we want to treat the land, and we want to treat the fish, and we want to treat everything with the utmost respect. So every guide that goes out, like, no trash is ending up in the river. It was a fully catch and release fishery. We didn't use treble hooks. I know this is kind of a foreign thing for the US and fly fishing, but a lot of Atlantic salmon fishing overseas is done with a double or treble based on how those fish take a tube or swung fly of any means. We would fish doubles. As an Atlantic salmon comes up, they turn really slow. You basically do nothing, and the double's right there in the corner. But that extra hook is not getting caught in the tongue. It's not getting caught on an outside gill, and you're not having extra mortality within the fish. In terms of guiding, everyone wants their picture taken with a fish, and I'm sure any guide listening to this podcast can agree. But as a guide, you are really responsible for how you set that up with your guests, whether it's something that, if you can get out of the boat, if we're guiding in a jet boat, and you can go to shore and make sure that fish is held over the water, we want to minimize time out of the water, quick couple seconds, make sure water's still dripping off the side of the fish, take the time you need for a healthy release, any and all of that. And I don't want to say it's easy to get complacent, but in such a rich ecosystem where you're seeing so many fish, you just have to remember that each and every one of them is special. So and I think everyone there in the same mindset would want to treat all of those fish with respect in the area around it. I mean, that doesn't just go for there. The same practice was in all areas of guiding, whether that's Tierra del Fuego, whether it's Alaska, whether it's Iceland. At the end of the day, I've heard this so many times where, like, the fish are our business partners. You got to treat them right. And the cool part was that in these places, I'd say the overwhelming majority of the clientele were really understanding to that. I don't think many were intentionally trying to do harm in any way, and everyone just wanted to have a good experience. And from a guide or a lodge manager, it really is your responsibility to set that practice in motion, so everything's getting treated right.
Really, really appreciate that. Great thoughts. So, yeah, I guess continue down the path. You're now at Guideline. Would you mind sharing with us your excitement about what you're currently doing?
Yeah, so I got to hang up my guide boots early, so to speak. And while I was over guiding internationally, I got really lucky and, like I said, met some really great people that were clients turned friends. And oftentimes those were people that were also really intertwined in the fly fishing industry. But I'll share a quick story with the Guideline stuff before I get into the current role with them. which is that the first time I ever got to Panoi, I made the best mistake of my entire life, which was I left my US brand two-handed spey rod hanging off the back of my jet boat during the training and pre-fishing where we were shown some parts of the river, and somebody smoked that rod. They hit the rod tip off, and obviously there were no repairs there, but our camp rods were a older model of Guideline called an LXI. I think it was a 13.9 two-hander. So I got one of those really quick, and I had spey fished and two-hand fished in Alaska leading up to this point, but started fishing with that and was just like totally blown away, especially having spent like a lifetime in fly fishing up into this point. Like, here's a company that I've never heard of, and they're producing stuff that's blowing away what, should have been the best US equipment that was available at that time. So got really lucky to guide their head product developer a few years later, and I figured out why. Like, he was a world champion caster with all of the medals around the world to back that up in single and double hand. His name was Leif Stavmo, like one of the fishiest dudes I've ever met in my entire life. So kept in touch with him, and like when it was time, I remember saying a couple times, like, you got to bring this stuff to the US. I think there's a market for stuff that is designed with a technical aspect in mind, like exactly what's being done. And there's a big hole in what we have here. And a couple years later, got the call. So talked with them, creating a plan over the next few years. And here we are with Guideline USA that has just launched at the end of this past February. So we've been fully online with a US company to this point. We do rods, we do reels, we do lines. There's some smaller soft goods offered there, but the rods, same thing. They're designed by world champion casters and anglers, a gentleman named Teles Katsogianos. See if I think I did his last name justice there, but but he joined the production team or the development team, and he's same thing, current world record holder for two-handed fly rods. I think he has the distance record in the 15-1 two-hand category, and same thing, ton of single-hand medals as well. Like, everyone in the company through and through lives and breathes fly fishing. And I'm just like really excited to be a part of it. And in terms of like, how is it different from the US? Like, okay, here's a rod brand that a lot of people here of the 7 million census anglers that said they've been fly fishing at least after COVID once. What are they going to do with a new brand? But like, my whole point is it's not new. It's something that's been developed for over 30 years. And the Scandinavian outlook on fly fishing and on fly fishing product development is just so cool and so technical. Every single rod we produce has grains and grams right there on the side. It's not two-handers, it's the single-handers too. For any question about what line needs to be going on what rod. And in terms of rod action for specific stuff, it just feels like the right people are behind the right project. So you pick up the rod that's designed for saltwater fly fishing, the NT11 Saline, and it's the 10 weight of it's my favorite rod that's ever been produced. Like, hand to heart, I'll be fishing that for permit forever until something else comes along, but probably not. Like, I'd be good with it. I know that's another tangent, but that's a lot of the fly fishing I do now. I still love the anadromous stuff. I love the two-hand stuff. I'll trout fish where I can and have some guys that I fish with that are still way better than me at it, but really do love the saltwater aspect of things. So I know kind of a multi-part answer there, but the room for Guideline was certainly here in the US, and it's really when somebody gets one in their hand, it makes my job really easy.
So what is Guideline as a company, as an organization? What do they do for conservation?
This one was one of my favorite questions to answer, because I think we see it a lot these days with companies trying to put their money where their mouth is in terms of conservation forward practices. And this is one that I'm really proud to be a part of on that. I'll go through a couple specific examples, but if anyone's curious, they can even just go to the website and look up the responsible fly fishing portion of it, the clean all the way portion of it. And that goes in both product development, in distribution, and in terms of like what we do. We're growing this section in the US, but with especially nonprofits overseas for some issues we are really, really well just intertwined with, like Atlantic salmon farming and clean river habitat and everything like that. But in terms of product development, first, clean all the way is certainly there. Like if you go on and you look at the Nova fly reel, the Nova is our entry level fly reel. It's a die cast reel, but it's actually fully recycled. There's no single use plastic in the plastic components of the reel. The packaging is recycled. The aluminum that makes up the die cast frame is recycled aluminum as well. I think it's certainly the first fly reel of its kind like that, and one of the first products of its kind like that. And at the end of the day, it's also really fun to fish. Again, it's a die cast reel. It's an entry level reel, but for people that are getting into fly fishing, I think it's cool to have the option of something that was designed with conservation in mind. The same goes with the Elevation and the LPX rod series. That is the epoxy that goes into going around the blanks to put guides on. It goes into the metal that's in the guides. The blanks are unsanded because of environmental impacts of the resin that even have better practices for fishing. Like if you're Euro nymphing, you want an unsanded blank because your mono or whatever line you're using is not going to stick to the rod when it gets wet. So you have this win-win scenario where the eco-friendly method of creating it is actually better for the fishing itself too. And then in the same way, recycled packaging all across the board. And you always try to do what you can, but it does feel good to be a part of a company that like takes this stuff into account when creating products. Because I think one of the ways forward, I don't know necessarily, I'm not here to tell you how we exactly solve the climate crisis in one way or another, but every little bit helps. And the last bit is who we endorse, and a lot of that comes with overseas, and in my part here in the US, there's some people that I think would be great candidates too that I'm going to send you right after we finish wrapping this up, who are doing more on the ground boots work with conservation, whether it is going against the repealing of the roadless rule that's going to open up areas like the Tongass up for logging, whether it is anti-development of the Roaring Fork Valley in Colorado. I think you'll find that many of our guides and our like endorsed guide ambassadors are all conservation first and looking to make sure that the water that they guide on and they get to share with their guests is as pristine as it possibly could be. And we are all for endorsing and spreading that word for conservation in any way that we can.
Wow, how refreshing. That was awesome. Sounds like an incredible organization. So, Max, what a pleasure. Thanks for sharing all that with us. Yeah, would you like to, kind of share with us how you'd like to wrap this up and kind of what you see in your future?
I can tell you the immediate one in terms of, I gave a brief intro. We talked a bit about guiding. We talked a bit about what's going on now with Guideline. But, at the end of the day, I just love to fly fish. I love spending time on the water. I love spending time on the water with people that I care about. I think that's something that's almost sacred in a way in terms of what's next. The thing that has my fire still going at this point, I really need to get on the board in one of these permit tournaments with my really close friend, Captain Chris Wilson in the Keys. It's, I don't want to say reinvigorated some competitive spirit because I don't necessarily think that needs to be in fly fishing, but it's cool to take on different challenges, and to get to do that with a friend is something that's really special. And everybody's got their next step in their fly fishing journey, whether it's trout, whether it's saltwater, whether it's a destination or trying to break a personal best back home, or even like a conservation project they're working in their neck of the woods. But I think there's a little bit of all of that for me. I see fly fishing as a lifelong endeavor and something that's absolutely consumed my life, and I'm really excited to see what's next with Guideline here in the States. That's been a project that's been a few years in the making now, but only a few months in practice. Really, really excited to watch that continue to grow. And then in my own fishing, it's just excited to spend more time on the water with whatever I'm fishing for, with whoever I'm fishing with. I never really grew out of that. But if I had to pick one, the Keys permit is up top there. They'll test you in ways that you didn't think was possible. You're fishing days for a chance, and you got to make the most of that chance. And it's a pretty cool opposite, or not even parallel, but just something in terms of the entire fly fishing experience, where you're hunting down to that one shot and that one chance. At the end of the day, that fish is probably smarter than most of us, definitely me. It's cool. It's cool to get the opportunity to make that happen and compete against some really, really good anglers and get to share that with all of them too. That's my immediate one. But any day I'm on the water with anybody, that's a great day.
Well, we'll all root for you that you get the big W.
We'll just, fish on the board is all that matters. We're doing the IGFA in the beginning of October here. Fingers crossed that they swim the right way, and that we get a couple shots that hopefully go our way. But at the end of the day, that's not up to us.
Awesome. Well, Max, what an honor to have you. That was fantastic, and really appreciate you joining the club at Smart to Fish Wild. Really appreciate it. Thanks, Max.
Thanks so much for having me.
Thanks for spending time with us today on Smart to Fish Wild. I hope today's conversation resonated and gave you something to think about. Please consider sharing this episode with other people who you think might find value. Until next time, get smart so you can fish wild.